Um,
Welcome
Pleasure.
everybody to Daniel Hoffman. This is day 11 of our Niggin a Day series with the Global Klezmer string players. And we're delighted to welcome Daniel today from Tel Aviv. And I'm going to put the spotlight on him and say, Daniel, would you like to dive right in and tell us what your Niggin of the Day is going to be and play us something?
um, yeah, well, I'm going to start with number 120, which is uh, it's to me it sounds like a joke. And I've never had any exposure to any of this repertoire, except there's one of the Nigunim that you sent me is very much like something that you hear all the time at religious weddings, and I'll
Ah.
play that later.
And could you turn your volume up a bit? I think somebody said that it's a little quiet. Thank you. Take it away.
Maybe I'll get this microphone a little closer.
That sounds a little louder. We don't
There we go.
high.
Is that better?
I guess so. It's good for me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Wow. It's amazing that these tunes only have numbers. It doesn't really do them justice, does it?
Yeah, do you know there's another book called International Hebrew Wedding Music that was published, and you know this one, in New
Hmm.
York in 1905 or something. And we used to turn it into an acronym, and it has four letters, so it's like a tetragrammaton. It's like you can't say it. It's IHWM. So it's the unsayable word, ifum. But I'm not supposed to say it, or.
God knows what. I mean, who knows what will happen? Yes. So, would you like to play something else immediately, or could I ask you a few questions? Because I'm fascinated. We were having a conversation earlier about how you play a lot of Turkish music and not so many Jewish weddings. And I was interested in the type of Jewish weddings that you play there in Israel, because we know that there's a different attitude to klezmer over there. There's not quite the same passion for it that we have in Europe and America. Is that right?
Well, klezmer, the word klezmer has a different meaning here. In Hebrew, it's pronounced klezmer. Uh, and basically it means religious Ashkenazi music. And stylistically, it can kind of be all over the map. But usually it's a rock band. And sometimes you have a clarinet playing very, very much in the style of the klezmer that everybody knows. And usually the singer is singing either in, usually singing in Loishin Kodesh. They're singing in a heavily Yiddish accented Hebrew. But the kind of klezmer I play, most people haven't heard. In the last 10 years or so, there's been some klezmer bands popping up. And also just the scene in New York kind of spreads everywhere and in Europe. And so some of the repertoire from the klezmer music that I'm familiar with is also seeping into what's called klezmer here. But usually, if you go to a wedding, you will hear a lot of Shlomo Carlebach. It depends on the wedding. It depends if it's, there's all these different strata of religious observance here, and they sort of keep to themselves. I've played a lot of what you call knitted kippah weddings. Sometimes they're called national religious, and they're usually quite young. They're usually the chatan is in the army, and the kala is like 17 or 18 years old. And it's it's rock and roll. It's rock and roll, and honestly, it's hard to get a word in edgewise when you're playing the violin, even if you have an electric fiddle, because it's such a different aesthetic. I love acoustic music. I love the sound of a violin. And I played dozens and dozens of these weddings when I first moved here 15 years ago. I moved here from California. I grew up in Los Angeles, so I lived in the Bay Area for about 15 years also. And when I first got here, I just had to take whatever gig I could because I had to feed my family. Still have that problem. In fact, I have even less work now. I'm laughing, but actually I would be crying. Anyway, I played lots and lots of these weddings, and eventually I just got so burned out. You get your quarter chicken, you play for like 5 hours. It's incredibly loud. You sort of take a beating.
I think Rhea had a question. Do you want to unmute yourself, Rhea?
Unmute, yes. What's the difference then between Nigun and Klezmer? Because I discovered Klezmer in Poland and have fallen in love with it. And I hear when you were playing little bits of what I recognize as typically Klezmer.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started playing klezmer, I was listening to clarinet players. This was like 1983? No, 1989. I was listening to a lot of, and I was trying to learn how to play klezmer fiddle. I didn't have a lot of the old recordings. So I was trying to play like a clarinet player, and it wasn't till later that I started getting the violin tradition, which is its own separate thing. It's really its own approach to it. But the thing that all binds it together, as far as I understand, is the language. It's the Yiddish language. And a lot of what we do that makes the violin sound like klezmer or the clarinet in different ways comes from the musicality of the Yiddish language. And when I remember my grandfather was from Poland, speaking in English. His English was horrible. He had such a thick Yiddish accent that suddenly when I started making sense of klezmer after listening to Yiddish singers, suddenly I recognized it. Suddenly I was like, oh, yes, that's the sound. That's the thing. It took me a while before I made the connection with the singers. So, klezmer that most people play and call klezmer around the world is mostly instrumental music. But it's not the border between that and Yiddish folk music and Nigunim is not, it's not made of steel. There's a lot of cross-pollination. As far as I know, the biggest difference is that a nigun has to be able to be sung. It has to be easy enough, pretty much, that somebody sings it once and everybody else sings it pretty much immediately. I mean, you know, you can't do something like, you can't sing that. So a lot of it is based on the abilities of the instruments. And of course, the violin was the klezmer instrument until we were kicked off the train by some rowdy horn players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the meaning of the word itself, Klezmer, means vessel of song. So that
Yeah.
the word is, you know, means musical instrument. And then it was also used for the musicians. A musician was a klezmer.
Yeah.
And then it became used to describe the music that these traditional Jewish professional folk musicians played. So
Right. And my father just called it Jewish music.
exactly, yeah. If you came from the community, it was just the music you heard, the folk,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
This is before anybody started calling it klezmer. He used to play klezmer tunes on the piano when I was a little kid.
And in fact, Moshe Beregovski apparently invented the term klezmer, you know, when he was writing
really?
Jewish folk music that he was collecting. So we have him to thank for that also, possibly. How about another tune, Daniel? What do you think?
Okay. What was I going to play here? Oh yeah, so I wanted to play this nigun, which is the next one in the book, 121, which is very much like a piece called Arba Babot, which is the tune I was saying. I was saying earlier that you hear at a lot of religious weddings. It's a very gorgeous Hasidic melody, and as soon as I played this, I thought, "What? Wait, what is this tune? Wait, I know this tune, but it's different." And in relationship to what's in the Beregovski book, it's more developed. Or there's 5 different parts. The Beregovski nigun is like maybe 2.5, 3 parts. No, it's really like 2. So I'm going to play you the Beregovski version, and then I'm going to play the Arba Babot version, the version that people play now very widely. I'm going to try not to mess the 2 up, because I know this Arba Babot really well, and this other nigun it's quite new to me. So here we go. This is number 121. So that's the Beregovski version. Now I'm going to play you Arba Babot. It's in a different key, so don't be shocked. Now we're in La major, or A major.
Mm. Wow. And does that have a particular role in the wedding?
It's usually when the bride starts walking down, and then while she's circling the khatan.
Oh, okay. So it's like Eshet Chayil, that kind of.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. There's some people who want really upbeat music in that moment. And the typical Israeli wedding, they're blaring rock music at that moment. It's like
Wow.
fireworks and Vegas. But in religious weddings, it's usually a little more subdued at that point. I mean, it's a beautiful moment. It's an amazing moment.
No, I mean, I think it's not exactly joyous, but the idea is that it takes you spiritually somewhere else, and sometimes that's a place of joy, and sometimes it's just a greater connection with the spiritual world. Is that fair
Yeah,
to say? Yeah.
yeah. And you know what? The nice thing about this nigun and a lot of other ones you hear playing it, or really almost all of them when you play at a wedding, is that everybody knows all of them and everybody's singing along all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
Beregovski.
had the same experience playing with Ehud Banai, who's a rock musician. He's sort of like the Bob Dylan of Israel.
Okay.
He's very famous and beloved, and everybody knows all the words to all of his songs.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I wanted to ask you about your Violin Round the World series because you're a bit of a connector and collector. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I've become a documentary film producer.
Oh, sorry. Yes. That.
No, it's just, you know, these days you have to wear 5 or 6 different hats in order to get by. So Violin Around the World started, the idea for it started maybe 20 years ago when I visited Morocco. And I was attracted to Morocco because a friend of mine went there, and I wanted to go to this place in Marrakesh, which is called the Jam Fna, which fills up with snake charmers and food booths and musicians and dancers, and it's like really wild. And I thought, wow, what an amazing place. And I went there, and there was a kind of music, Shabi music, I think they call it, the different kinds of Moroccan and Berber folk music they play, where they're playing a viola, and they're playing it like this. But it wasn't that, you know, the role of the viola was just supporting the singers. They're playing everything the singers are singing, and they have a range of about 7 notes. And I wasn't I mean, I love the music because it's all about the rhythm, you know, it's the beat and the groove, which is fantastic. But the violin was not that interesting. So at the Jam Ofna, you can drink orange juice, fresh and squeezed, and if you do it, you're certainly going to get sick. But I couldn't resist, so I got sick, and I checked into a more expensive hotel. In other words, like $20 a night, where in the evening they had a show in the lobby, and in that lobby there was a trio of musicians playing Andalusian music. This is, in French they call it musique andalouse. It's not Spanish music, but it's Spanish music from before the expulsion. It's the tradition that when the Muslims and Jews were kicked out, they brought it to North Africa. And it's been preserved pretty well for the last 500 years. And the violin tradition, it's also played on the knee like this. And I heard this guy play, and I was like, wow, I just lost my mind. And I found I didn't even speak French or Darija, which is the Arabic they speak there. And so I got somebody to translate for me and say, I want to study with you. I want to study with you. And then I started studying with this guy. I could barely speak to him for about a week. It was fascinating in the old city of Marrakesh. He had to come get me because there's no way I could find him. And then afterwards, I went to Fez and I studied for a few weeks with somebody from the Fez Conservatory. And this is where the idea came. So the idea is that I'm going to go to one of the places in the world that uses the violin in their traditional classical music. And it's some 30, 35 places, because the violin is the most versatile musical instrument in the world. You can play the most different kinds of music on the violin, more than any other instrument, because it can mimic the sound of the human voice very well. And it doesn't have frets. And because you have a bow, you can hold the note like a singer. All these reasons. And because the technology of the Italianate violin, which is this thing here, that everybody plays, it's a version of this violin, which was perfected in 1535, hasn't really changed, because it was such, it isn't like it came out of nowhere. It was developed over hundreds and hundreds of years until it finally reached this form. And when it reached this form, something happened. The sound popped out more. It was louder than everything else. It was this new technology, and that sort of spread. And it spread from Europe all over the world. Now it's used in India, in Iran, in all over the Arab world, Turkey, all over, a few different styles in Greece, of course, the British Isles, Scandinavia, various styles in Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Romania. There's like 3 or 4 different styles in North America, Cape Breton, Cajun jazz, bluegrass, mariachi. In Venezuela, they have this funky kind of folk music they call Middle Eastern, no, they call it Eastern music because it's from Eastern Venezuela. There's a Native American Canadian style that's very much related to Scottish music. There's Finnish music. And so I thought, what if I could learn all these styles? Of course it's impossible. So I came up with this idea to go to a country with a style I don't know the music and spend 1 week studying with a master teacher. And at the end of the week to play in a concert with him or her. Short piece, 5 or 10 minutes, not the whole concert. And that's the idea. And I filmed the first episode in Ireland 7 years ago, I think. And it was shown widely in the United States on public television. And now I'm trying to get the second episode going. I've been trying to find a producer for years, and I finally found one. And so we were getting all set to go to Morocco, which was going to be the second episode, and hopefully get Arte and some other networks interested. And now I'm not sure what's going to happen. But it's called, the name of the movie is called Otherwise It's Just Firewood.
And you can find it on your website. I think that's right, isn't it? The Violin Around the World website.
Yeah, Violin Around the World is the name of the website.
Yeah. God, it's fascinating. And does it sort of take you back to when you first connected with Klezmer and when did you first hear that music, and how did you sort of get into playing?
How did I get into Klezmer?
Mm.
Well, I heard my father playing it since I was really small. He plays piano. He's not a professional pianist, but he used to play a lot. He loved Beethoven. That was really what he was into. But he also liked to play what he called popular music, which was everything else but than classical music. There's classical and there's popular. And one of the popular styles he played was something called Jewish music. And he would play out of the Cayman books. So he would play tunes out of the Cayman books, that the edition that was written for piano. And the first one I heard that he used to play all the time, of course, was this. It's a tune you can even hear here in Israel. It's so famous.
They call it Sherala, don't they? Little Cher dance, yeah.
Yeah, I think I knew it as Freilich's number 1.
Of 10,000.
Right.
And do you have one more tune that you'd like to share with us today?
Can I play you a doina?
Oh, a doina, yeah. Prepare yourself, Ria. It's not a happy one. So doina is like a Romanian shepherd's song, and in the Jewish tradition, it's always very much a lament, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something like a prayer, something between a prayer and a cadenza. It doesn't have meter, but I tried to learn a lot of the Jewish doinas from the old recordings that violinists played, and then I started writing my own. And this is the second one I wrote, which is called quite original name. It's called G minor doina. I thought that up myself. I was pretty proud. Okay. Thank you.
Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Has anybody else got any questions that they'd like to ask Daniel while he's here for us? Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah.
Just a
very much
normal
enjoyed
work
it.
day.
Thanks for including me in this project. And
It's exciting for us every day in a new place. Thanks, Daniel Hoffman. Everybody, I'm going to put you on tiling and take him off the spotlight so that we can just see everybody, or some of
thank
the
you.
everybody.